think firstly, just in terms of them personally, Andy Burnham is considered to be a very charismatic individual, something that Starmer is often considered as to be lacking. Secondly, he has obviously strong credentials in Northern England. He's been the mayor of Manchester for 9 years. He's considered to have a very strong political hold over that area of England, and I think really that is such a crucial part of the kind of electoral map for the Labour Party, which is why they've kind of been looking towards Andy Burnham. But I would also say the fact that Andy Burnham has kind of been out of central government for such a long time. Really, the last time he was part of the government was in 2010, and that kind of gives him, to some extent, an element of being detached from the current government, which perhaps kind of he's seen as a new face. So I think really that's one of the main reasons why he's seen as a potential winner. But I think really, the main challenge to Labour at the moment is the populist Reform UK led by Nigel Farage. So I think really they are looking towards someone who has stronger sort of working class credentials, which I think is why really the Labour Party is rallying around Andy Burnham. And I say his by-election win last week was really much stronger than actually a lot of people had anticipated, which I think is why they may be looking towards him as a bit of a solution towards their electoral problem.
Assuming he does win and become prime minister for the Labour Party, what would that mean for policy continuation, or will there be massive changes?
I think it really depends on how he becomes prime minister. It's increasingly looking like there might be more of a sort of leadership coronation where there is no contested leadership election. And I think in that circumstance, that actually does bind him towards Labour's election manifesto from 2024, because ultimately, if he hasn't run an election where he's been elected by the Labour Party members, he won't really have any kind of renewed electoral mandate to kind of introduce any new policies. So I think actually what seems to be like the most likely scenario, which is there is a no contested leadership election where he's ultimately brought into number 10, I think that actually could be quite a difficult thing for Andy Burnham. I think that would also result in actually less time for him to prepare any kind of policy objectives going forward. So I think the most likely scenario is actually there won't be a significant amount of change. But I think really in order for him to succeed where Starmer failed, what he needs to do is actually appear much more radical in his policies, but also crucially communicate a kind of message of change from the government. Really, the kind of government had failed in its communications after the last election, and that has really caused a major drop in support for the government, so quickly after the election. So really, he has to try to channel and craft some kind of new narrative that certainly separates his new premiership, if he is elected, from the previous Starmer administration.
And finally, Adam, this is the sixth prime minister in 10 years that the UK has had, and the world is watching that. What are the implications of this? Is this a welcome, refreshing change, or is this signaling some level of instability for the economy?
Well, it's extremely difficult because really the last thing that the Labour Party and Keir Starmer wanted to do was actually repeat the same kind of political circus of changing the Prime Minister every 2 years that we saw under the Conservative government just a few years ago. And so really this will be seen, I think, as a major failure in terms of restoring the kind of UK's political stability that was really promised. But ultimately they're in a bit of a bind. Either they keep a very unpopular Prime Minister or they try to change it. So I think really they didn't have much choice in this respect. But I would say, the UK's political system is more resembling Italy's from maybe 15 years ago, when basically the country appeared ungovernable because as soon as a prime minister came in, they just seemed so unpopular that really they became so toxic. So I think it is deeply worrying for the public and, of course, also for markets, because markets also want political stability, which, of course, has a direct relation to how the UK can govern, because actually in terms of how much the UK government can borrow is directly related to confidence from markets, particularly in bond markets. So ultimately, this kind of political instability has a direct negative impact on actually a government's ability to spend more money on public services, which of course ultimately means it's going to be less popular than it might have been. So I think really what is so urgent is actually that the Labour Party focuses on political stability, because it's only got one shot at this. It cannot change a leader again like we had under the previous Conservative administration when they had Liz Truss and then Rishi Sunak. They have one attempt at this, and if they don't, there is Nigel Farage's populist Reform Party who are waiting in the wings, who will really cause significant damage to the UK if they get in. So it's very high stakes indeed.